Hello everyone, this is Warhawk Beyond 2040 and welcome to another edition of the Jazz Albums Review Series. And today I'm going to be taking a look at the very small but impressive catalogue from one of my favourite musicians of all time, the one and only saxophonist, bandleader and composer Mark Turner. And since bursting onto the scene in the mid-90s and over the course of a 20-year plus career, Mark Turner has cemented himself as one of the most important voices of the saxophone and has collaborated with a number of musicians and bands over the years. From Tom Harrell to Billy Hart to Jonathan Blake to Aaron Goldberg to Enrico Rava to Kurt Rosenwinkel to Brad Mehldau to Jeff Ballard to Joshua Redman, John Patitucci, Rufus Reid, Jimmy Smith, Seamus Blake, Vince Herring, Nicholas Payton, and he currently co-leads a trio comprised of himself, Jeff Ballard and Larry Grenadier, collectively known as Fly, and has also released a number of albums under his name as a bandleader. And for today's edition, I'm going to be taking a look at that catalogue, which is a total of 6 studio albums. And as always, I'm going to be talking about each album individually, and I'll be choosing which one I think is the best one. And before I get started, although Mark Turner's catalogue is very small, it is very impressive and there is no bad album in sight. Yes, there are some albums that are a little bit better than others, but I can promise you now there is no weak album in this catalogue. So we're going to start with the first album, which was released in 1995 on Crisscross Records, and this is Yam Yam. So Mark Turner made his debut in 1995 with his first album for Crisscross Records, and it features an all-star cast of musicians: Kurt Rosenwinkel on guitar, Brad Mehldau on piano, Larry Grenadier on bass, Auger Rossi on drums, and 2 guest appearances from saxophonist Seamus Blake and Terence Dean. Now, when you listen to those names, they're big names, but at the time, these guys were relatively unknowns. But it's quite interesting to look at those names and see where they are now in their careers. Brad Mehldau is considered by many to be the greatest modern living pianist of all time, and the heir apparent to the Keith Jarrett throne. Kurt Rosenwinkel has gone on to become a massive guitar hero in the guitar world and has cemented himself as one of the true all-time guitar greats. Larry Grenadier is one of the most decorated and respected bass players of all time. Auger Rossi is a highly acclaimed drummer. Seamus Blake and Terence Dean have both gone on to become respected band leaders in their own right, and they have also collaborated with a number of other musicians as well. So there's a lot of star power on this album when you look back from 1995 all the way to now in 2021. And it's quite interesting to see where everybody has grown and gone on to become in later years. So most of the compositions are composed by Mark Turner, with a couple of contributions from Brad Mehldau and Kurt Rosenwinkel and one standard. But it's a great collection of songs and no bad song in sight. So we've got track 1, tune number 1, 2, Cubism by Kurt Rosenwinkel, the title track Yam Yam Part 1, Moment's Notice by John Coltrane, Isolation by Mark Turner, Subtle Tragedy by Brad Mehldau, Zurich by Mark Turner, Blues by Mark Turner, and Yam Yam Part 2 by Mark Turner. Great collection of songs, great place to start if you're looking to get into Mark Turner's solo albums. So let's have a quick look. Here's some sleeve notes. A little bit of a description about each track. And some more sleeve notes, and there's a nice picture of Kurt Rosenwinkel and Brad Mehldau. So the standout tracks for me are tune number 1, Yam Yam 1, Yam Yam 2, Isolation, Moment's Notice and Zurich. But as I mentioned, a great collection of songs and lots of star power on this album. And even though this is very much Mark Turner's album, it's a true band effort and everybody really pulls their weight and they deliver some unbelievable solos, especially from Kurt Rosenwinkel and Brad Mehldau. So there you have it, Mark Turner's debut album on Crisscross Records, Yam Yam. Great album and a great debut. And as we move along here, we come to the next album, which was released in 1988, and this is a self-titled album simply called Mark Turner. So this is more of a quartet album as opposed to the first album, which was more of a quintet, and this features Mark Turner on tenor saxophone, Edward Simon on piano, Christopher Thomas on bass, and the great Brian Blade on drums, and a guest appearance from Joshua Redman on additional tenor saxophone, who is featured on 3 tracks. Great follow-up O2 Yam Yam, and we've got tracks such as Mr. Brown, Lost Ocean, 317 East 32nd Street, Kathleen Gray, Hey It's Me You're Talking To, Autumn in New York, Magnolia Triangle, and 26-2. Excellent album and a great follow-up to Yam Yam. So let's have a quick look. Some sleeve notes here. And some more here. And some more there. And the man himself. So the standout tracks for me, I would say, are Kathleen Gray, which is a cover version of the Pat Metheny and Ornette Coleman composition from their Song X collaboration. Hey It's Me You're Talking To, Mr. Brown, and Autumn in New York, but a great collection of songs, and one that I would highly recommend you check out. And it's a little bit hard to find, but it's definitely worth the search, and it's definitely worth listening to. So there you have it, Mark Turner's self-titled album, simply called Mark Turner. Excellent album. So as we move along to the next album, we would see another album that was released in the same year, and this is In This World. So we've got Mark Turner on tenor saxophone, Brad Mehldau on piano, and is featured on a couple tracks on Fender Rhodes, Larry Grenadier on bass, the great Brian Blade is back here again on drums, Orge Rossi on a couple of tracks on drums, and Kurt Rosenwinkel on a couple of tracks on guitar. Great follow-up album to the self-titled album, and a great collection of songs. So we've got songs like Mesa, Lenny Groove, You Know I Care, The Long Road, Barcelona, the title track In This World, Days of Wine and Roses, Bo Brussels, She Said, which is a cover version of a classic Beatles song. So great follow-up to the self-titled album. Let's have a quick look. It's funny that Mark Turner released 2 albums in the same year. Very rare you get that. So there's some more sleeve notes. Some credits there. And some sleeve notes provided by Brad Mehldau, who's just unbelievable in this album. And Kurt Rosenwinkel as well. There he is. It's a good follow-up album to the self-titled. It's near enough the same lineup as the last album. There's a couple of differences. So standout tracks for me are In This World, Bo Brussels, Barcelona, the title track, You Know I Care, and Lenny Groove and Mesa. But as I mentioned, no bad song here, and a great follow-up to Mark Turner's self-titled album. So there you have it, In This World. Excellent follow-up, and another great addition in the catalogue. Now, this album is a little bit different, and this album would come out in 2000, and this is Ballad Sessions. So this was the first Mark Turner album that I ever bought, and I first became aware of him on a John Patitucci recording, and I thought his sax playing just absolutely blew me away, and I went to find this album, which I found in an old record store many years ago, and it's a great, beautiful collection of ballads. So it's all virtually cover versions of famous songs, but it's a beautiful album, and one that I highly recommend. So let's have a quick look. Hard to believe this came out like over 20 years ago, but it still sounds fresh. So this is more of a band effort. So we've got Mark Turner on tenor saxophone, Kurt Rosenwinkel on guitar, Kevin Hayes on piano, Larry Grenadier on bass, and the great Brian Blade is back again on drums. So there's the band. Look at that star power right there. So as I mentioned already, this is virtually all covers, mostly ballads, but this is still a beautiful album. So we got I Loves You Porgy by George Gershwin, Some Other Time by Leonard Bernstein and Betty Comden and Adolph Green, Nefertiti by Wayne Shorter, Skylark by Hoagie Carmichael, No More by Salvador Camarata and Sidney Keith Russell, All or Nothing at All by Arthur Altman and Jack Lawrence, Visions by Bobby Hutchinson, Alone Don't I by Herbie Hancock, Late Laments by Paul Desmond, and Jesus Maria by the legendary Carla Bley. It's a great album, this is. Very laid back compared to his earlier albums, but it's still a fantastic recording nonetheless. So, the standout tracks for me on this album, this is one of my favourite Mark Turner albums. I Loves You Porgy, Some Other Time, Skylark, No More, All or Nothing at All, Late Lament, and Jesus Maria. It's a great album and one of my favourite Mark Turner albums, and the first one that I ever bought. So there you have it, Mark Turner Ballad Sessions, a classic Mark Turner recording, and in my opinion, one of his absolute best ever. Ballad Sessions, excellent album. So as we move along, we come to the next album, which was released in 2001, and this is another favourite of mine, and a very hard one to find. Dahama Days. Excellent album, little bit different to Ballad Sessions, but still a fun album to listen to nonetheless. So we got tracks like Iverson's Odyssey, Deserted Floor, Myron's World, We Free, Jackie's Place, Cassier Oscura, Zurich, Dahama Days, which is the title track, and 7 Points. Excellent album. Very hard album to find, but a fantastic album nonetheless. So a quick look. Very colourful album as well. So this is more of a quartet album. So we've got Mark Turner on tenor saxophone, Kurt Rosenwinkel back on guitar, Reed Anderson on bass, and the great Nasheet Watts on drums. All originals by Mark Turner, all compositions composed by him, and as I mentioned, great album. Another fun album this is. So there they are. Kurt Rosenwinkel was one of Mark Turner's main collaborators, and they even had a band at one point called the Rosenwinkel Turner Quintet, and he's just unbelievable on these albums. And I forgot what a great guitar player he was, because he's changed so much compared to when he first started, but he's just brilliant on this album. He's one of the standouts, if not the standout guy, other than Mark Turner on these albums. So there you have it, Dahama Days. Favourite standout tracks for me, Iverson's Odyssey, Myron's World, Cassier Oscura, Zurich, the title track, and 7 Points. But excellent album. One that I highly recommend if you can find it, Dahama Days. Brilliant album. So, Mark Turner would go quite a few years without making any albums. He would obviously lead the Fly Trio, and he would also collaborate with a number of other bands and artists over the course of the years. But he would sign with ECM in 2014 and release, in my opinion, one of his absolute bests, and this is Mark Turner Quartet, Lathe of Heaven, which was released in 2014, and this is a quartet album featuring Mark Turner on tenor saxophone, Asfenshir Cohen on trumpet, Joe Martin on bass, and Marcus Gilmore on drums. Brilliant album. And when I first bought this, it took a few goes to listen to this, because I'm not saying this album is bad. It's not easy listening, and it takes a few goes to really appreciate this, but I've listened to this quite a lot, not in recent years, but for a long time I was listening to this, and it's a really good album. And I've said in the past that I'm not normally a great fan of saxophone and trumpet together, depending on who the players are, but when you get someone like Mark Turner and Asfenshir Cohen together, you know it's only going to be magical, and these guys absolutely deliver. And it's quite interesting to hear no guitars or piano, it's just two horns and a rhythm section, and it's a really good recording. Kind of leans a little bit to the avant-garde side, which is what I was referring to, that it's not really an easy listening album. But at the same time, I've come to appreciate it more and more over the course of the years. And this is the last Mark Turner album that he has released as a band leader to date. He hasn't released any albums in recent years. He's been doing a lot of collaborations and co-led projects, but I would love to see him do another one. But this is just absolutely fantastic. And as I mentioned, you've really got to listen to it a few times to really appreciate it. So we've got tracks like Life of Heaven, Year of the Rabbit, Ethan's Line, The Edonist, Sonnet for Stevie, Brother Sister 2. So all these compositions are written and composed by Mark Turner. Let's have a quick look. And the sound quality, as you'd expect from ECM, is just second to none. It's just top notch. There's they are. Unbelievable rhythm section. And Marcus Gilmore, he's just an incredible drummer. And he's played with just about everyone from Chick Corea to Pat Metheny. You know, you name it, he's played with just about everybody. Some more there. And there's the guys. It's a fantastic album. So the standout tracks for me are the title track, Life of Heaven, Year of the Rabbit, Sonnet for Stevie, and Brother Sister 2. But it's a really good album, and as I mentioned already, it's one of those albums you've really got to sit down and listen to it a few times to fully appreciate it. So there you have it. Mark Turner Quartet, Life of Heaven. Classic album, and the last one that Mark Turner has released as a band leader under his name. And it's been quite a while now. I think it's been over 7 years since this last album. Mark Turner is long overdue to releasing another one, so let's hope he does. So, the best album for me, and as I mentioned, this catalogue is very small. There's only 6 studio albums. They're all good. Some are better than others. And this is quite a tough one for me, but I'm going to make a choice. I would say the best album for me is Life of Heaven. I love Ballad Sessions. It is my favourite album, but if we're going with the overall best album from his catalogue, we'll definitely go with Life of Heaven. It's just absolutely beautiful. Little bit on the avant-garde side in terms of free and improvisation, but it's a really good album and highly recommended, and it's still out there to buy, so you know, it's quite a recent recording. So there you have it. Mark Turner Quartet, Life of Heaven, and the one that I consider to be the best one. So there you have it. So that's going to be it from me. I'm going to wrap this up now. What's your favourite Mark Turner album? Is it Yam Yam? Is it In This World? Is it the self-titled? Is it the Ballad Sessions? Is it the Harmer Days? Or is it Life of Heaven? We all have our favourites. There's no wrong or right answer. You know what to do. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave your thoughts and comments down below, and I will see all of you next time for another edition of the Jazz Albums Review Series, where I am going to be talking about Mark Turner's band Fly. So make sure you don't miss that edition. So until next time, take care everybody and stay safe, and once again, thanks for listening.